A night in Paris always has its own way of making anyone fall in love. From the window of the hotel where I was staying on Rue Saint-Honoré, I could see the gleam of lights from the Eiffel Tower in the distance. The autumn air of the evening was cold, but soft. It was like touching the cheeks with smooth strokes of silk fabric. On the streets, black cars lined up, and the sound of cameras was already heard in the distance. I know tonight is going to be one of the most memorable nights in the fashion world. Paris Fashion Week, a place where beauty, style and charm meet in one light stage. But this year, two names from China are taking center stage: Zhang Linghe and Zhao Jinmai. I came as an observer, part of the international media team tasked with covering the evening's events. But more than just work, I knew tonight would be a visual and emotional experience hard to forget. The venue of the evening's event stood majestically near Place Vendôme, a neoclassical building with high pillars and sparkling marble floors. Spotlights radiated into the sky, marking that the most prestigious fashion parties were taking place. The grey carpet that stretched in front of the entrance was filled with flashlight. The sounds of arriving guests, the hum of cameras and the soft music of the DJ in the room mixed into one characteristic harmony. I was standing on the right side of the carpet, with fellow journalists from different countries. From that position, I could see every detail from the international models to the world celebrities who came in haute couture fashion. But the mood suddenly changed when a black car stopped right at the end of the carpet. The car door opened, and from the inside came out the figure of Zhao Jinmai. I've seen a lot of stars at fashion shows, but that night, the mood seemed to stop. Zhao Jinmai stepped down with slow steps, wearing a long pearl-white evening dress that reflected the light of the city lights. The shoulder cut is open, showing a graceful but still polite curve. The fabric dangles all the way to the floor, with tiny crystal details along the sides that sparkle whenever it moves. Her hair was gently laid back. Only a few strands were left to fall on the sides of the face, like a night wave touching the surface of the same. He didn't look directly at the camera. Instead, he lowered his head slightly, then smiled slowly. And somehow, the smile made the atmosphere warm in the middle of a cold Parisian night. The voices of the photographers instantly filled the air. Zhao Jinmai, over here. He waved his hand, simple but classy. Shortly thereafter, the door of the other car opened. A tall figure in an elegant black suit came out slowly. Zhang Linghe. He wore a classic cut tuxedo, with a thin bow tie and a crisp white shirt. But it's not the clothes that keep all eyes on her, it's the way she walks. Calm, measured and full of confidence, but without the slightest arrogance. When he stood next to Zhao Jinmai, their height difference created the perfect visual composition, as if the designers of the evening had deliberately written their destiny on the world fashion stage. He stared briefly at Jinmai, and in his eyes there was something subtle, like reverence, like admiration. Jinmai replied with a slight smile. No words, no exaggerated gestures, but the camera captures it all. Under the light of Parisian night lights, they looked like two figures from a classic film. A charismatic young man and a gentle woman with an angelic aura. I followed them into the venue. The long marble hallway is decorated with large mirrors and white flowers. Soft music flows. Classical piano mixes with the clinking of champagne glasses. Guests greet each other, take pictures and talk in mixed languages: English, French, Chinese. But the attention that night still fell on two figures who had just entered. Zhao Jinmai stepped slowly, gracefully. Her dress swayed gently every time she moved, as if dancing in the air, while Zhang Linghe walked half a step behind, watching the surrounding calmly. When someone almost nudged Jinmai from the side due to crowding, Linghe reflexively patted his arm softly and moved it slightly to the safer side. His movements were quick, but gentle, like something that was already very natural to him. I stood there, watching the interaction. Not many people realize, but behind their calmness, there is a real warmth. The main event begins. The room light was dimmed, only the spotlights above the runway remained. The music turned into a modern rhythm, and one by one the models walked, showing the latest collections of the designer. But among all the beauty, there is no denying it. The young couple from China stole the show. Every time the camera highlights the front row seats, Zhang Linghe and Zhao Jinmai's faces appear on the big screen, and small applause is heard from some Asian guests in the back. Zhao Jinmai looked at each outfit with interested eyes, occasionally whispering something to Linghe. He lowered his head slightly, listening with a warm expression. Perhaps they talked about the details of the design, or simply shared their impressions of the colors and textures. But from their gestures, it appears that they are very comfortable with each other. I can see it clearly, the way they adjust to the atmosphere without losing yourself. No drama, no imaging. Just two young people enjoying a fashion night with great serenity. The runway show finished around 10 in the evening. Guests began to move to the party room in the back where shimmering crystal chandeliers and the sounds of jazz music filled the air. Aromas of fresh flowers and expensive perfumes mix, creating such a Parisian atmosphere. Zhao Jinmai replaced her high heels with lower ones. He chuckled as his steps wavered, and Zhang Linghe spontaneously lowered his head, making sure he was okay. Several guests who saw him smiled at each other. The moment was small, but real. I moved to the side of the room to take photos from a different angle. From there, I saw how they talked to some international guests, signed guest books, and received compliments politely. But what interested me most was not the formal interaction. It was when they sat for a moment in a corner of the room, sharing a glass of mineral water, staring at the lights hanging above. They didn't talk much, but the atmosphere was calm. And I know, in such silence, sometimes there is a language that only two people who understand each other can understand. Around midnight, I followed several photographers to an open balcony on the top floor of the building. From there, the Eiffel Tower seems to sparkle with thousands of lights. The cold air is piercing, but beautiful. As I was photographing the scene, I saw out of the corner of my eye two silhouettes that I had already become very familiar with that night. Zhang Linghe and Zhao Jinmai stood on the side of the balcony, slightly away from the crowd. He wore a thin shawl over his shoulder, while Linghe stood to the side, with his hands in his pockets. They stared at the sparkling tower, in silence. The wind blows slowly Jinmai hair. Linghe turned his head slightly, then without hesitation took off his black suit and placed it on the girl's shoulder. The movement was so natural, without words, without drama. But for anyone who saw, it felt like a scene from a classic love movie. I had stared at them for a long time, two young humans in the midst of the glittering world of fashion, but still modest in their way of looking at each other. Several other photographers also looked, but no one raised the camera. For some reason, everyone chose to respect that silence. Perhaps because the moment felt too sincere to be used as publication material. Shortly after, they sat down in a small chair on the balcony. I could hear a little of their conversation from a distance. Zhao Jinmai's tone of voice was soft, like the rustle of the wind, while Zhang Linghe's voice was deep, calm, and soothing. "Paris always feels different at night," he says slowly. Jinmai nodded, staring at the lights across the river. "Yes. Everything feels softer, like the world stopped for a moment." I smiled in my heart. Simple sentences, but the way they say them is full of meaning. They talked about the evening's fashion, about how the light of the lamp can change the color shades of the fabric, and how each designer has his own soul. Their chatter was light, but full of curiosity, like two young artists understanding each other's worlds. Every little laugh, every silent pause, everything creates a harmonious atmosphere. It was as if the Parisian night witnessed two young lights growing together. At about 1 o'clock in the morning, the party ended. The guests began to go outside, and the night air was getting colder. I followed the outflow towards the road ahead of the venue. Street lamps reflect soft light on wet stones after a light rain. Zhao Jinmai stood on the side of the car, talking briefly with his manager. Zhang Linghe was nearby, waiting. He looked calm, his hand tucked into his coat pocket. When Jinmai finally said goodbye to some of the crew, he turned his head briefly towards Linghe. They exchanged small smiles, not formal smiles, but warm, sincere ones. I saw it clearly, a brief but deep eye view. There is respect, there is comfort, and somehow, there are tender feelings that do not need explanation. Zhao Jinmai's car slowly drove up, leaving the light of the street lamp. Zhang Linghe stared at him until the car disappeared around the corner, before finally getting into his own car. I stood there, stunned for a moment. In the middle of a sparkling Parisian night, I felt like I had just witnessed something beautiful. Not just two celebrities at a fashion show, but two young hearts walking side by side, understanding each other in silence. I returned to the hotel at about 2 in the morning. From the balcony of my room, the Eiffel Tower still shone, and the sky of Paris seemed silvery blue. I opened the laptop to write a coverage note that night, but my fingers stopped over the keyboard. How to write about something more than just fashion. Because that night, beauty was not only in Zhao Jinmai's white dress or Zhang Linghe's black suit. The true beauty is in the way they carry themselves, in the simplicity of interaction, and in the sincerity that is felt even without words. I write finally with simple sentences. Among the lights and glitter of the Parisian night, Zhang Linghe and Zhao Jinmai not only attend Fashion Week, they bring warmth that turns luxury into meaning. And maybe that's enough. Because beauty, like the Parisian night, does not need to be described, it just needs to be felt. A few days later, their photos in Paris appeared in various fashion magazines of the world. The title is variously, "The New Definition of Elegance," or "The Grace of Youth at Paris Night." But none of those articles could fully capture what I saw that night. Because behind the camera lens, there is something that only truly attentive eyes can see: body language, meaningful silence, and genuine mutual respect. That night, under the starry Paris sky, Zhang Linghe and Zhao Jinmai made no attempt to be the center of attention. But precisely because of this, they are the most beautiful light among all the glitters of world fashion. And I know that years later, when people remember that night, they will not only talk about fashion and parties, but also about two young people who bring harmony in the midst of the sparkling city of love.